Right, guys, I am back. Broken systems here. A couple of things. One, I am sitting at the hospital. My sister is being induced today. Was induced at 5:30 this morning. Um, she's about to have her baby. It's the first one in the family, a little boy. So I'm gonna be a first time auntie. I'm super excited. Like I said, I'm sitting in my car right now because nothing really is happening. Like I said, she was induced at 5 a.m. this morning, and it's now 5:47, and she's only. I think they said she's only like 7 centimeters dilated. I think they said it should be 10. But anyway, so hopefully by the end of today, tomorrow, we'll have a little nephew. Super excited. But yeah, so like I was driving up here, and it was always like a 2-hour drive. And I was listening to Spotify because my YouTube subscription canceled because ironically enough, I didn't have enough money to pay for it to get renewed. So like I had to listen to a bunch of commercials. So I was like, fuck this bullshit. I'm gonna just use Spotify. So that's what I did. And I typed in on the search about prison reform because like I generally like will listen to podcasts about that. That's where I get a lot of my information and stuff from too. This one I was listening to was called Reform and Ideology, I think is what the name of it was. And it was talking about, could the system be transformed from the inside? And it, the guy that was on the podcast was talking about how he was an activist, but he got this job at a youth prison. The stipulations were that like the job title said that he was a youth specialist. That's what the job title was. But when he went to go do the interview, he found out very fast that it wasn't a youth service person. It was a correctional officer at this youth facility. So he was just kind of like, what? Okay, that's not what the job title said, but whatever. So primarily, I don't know if they said what detention center this was, but primarily it was like a detention center for Latin American or Latinos. That was predominantly what kids were in there. And like the dude was talking about how he went through training and how like he thought that it was very weird that they had this training in place to where like it was like, if the kids had to stepped out of line, that you were to put them on their face and like, pretty much be an asshole to them to make them listen. And like they had these rules where like they had to ask if they had to ask to stand up to go throw trash away or like go get something. They weren't allowed to like walk around. They had to ask to walk around. And he thought that was very weird because he's like, well, what is this like? What are we doing? Like, this isn't reform. And so like when he started, I'm a firm believer in this, that if you treat inmates, or he referred to these guys as young men, with respect, and you don't come in there acting all big and bad and like you're better than them, that your shift is going to go a lot easier. I'm pretty sure that's the way it is with adults in prison too as well. Like I've out of the people that I've dated in prison, out of the people I know that have been to prison, like a lot of people say that they got their favorite guards, and like there's guards that like do their job, and like but they're treated like a human being, not an animal locked in a cage with like no sort of reform. And it's weird because like I don't touch a lot on youth correctional facilities. That's not, I've never really been like I've never had anybody or like been a part of that. So I found it very interesting, like, and this guy, he would talk to these kids, and they were, it was like they weren't allowed to have books, and like since they were all like Latin Americans or Latinos and like a couple black folks and a couple whites, like, whatever, but the vast majority of the prison guards were either Latino, black, and then you had the white ones. And I feel like a lot of facilities do that. And it makes sense now that I've listened to this youth reform type thing, that like predominantly they'll have officers that are of the same race, but like as a not a deterrence, but as like authority figure more so, because like they're more prone to listen to them than somebody else that's not that race. And the guy would talk about how like his supervisor was very racist. She is a white person. There you go again, stereotypical white people, but that like she was so racist and would call these kids like, a bunch of, not like, maybe not so much like the N word or anything like that, but like stipulations, like snidbits of like things that seemed racist. Or I would even look at that and be like, you are being a racist person right now, saying what you're saying. And he made a joke because apparently the woman had a black husband, so like he thought it was very weird that she would say this kind of stuff, or that she thought she was entitled, like, well, my husband's black, so I can say these things. And he approached the situation differently, and like that's what I'm saying, he was tricked essentially into being a prison guard. That's not what he signed up for. So then, the kids, were, he would bring in books, and then like he would get in trouble for bringing in books. Like they'd be like, well, they're not allowed to have these. They have their own little library. But I'm like, damn, be like, those kids have read those books like repeatedly. And he was just he was doing what he was supposed to be doing, which was a youth specialist, was helping youth and helping, like, doing what essentially the prison system was supposed to do. Now, we all know this, that the prison system is designed for failure. It was never designed for rehabilitation, like, at all. It was designed for failure as a form of power and authority figures. And, like, you think about it in a youth facility, like, maybe not so much a grown prison, but, like, a youth facility, these are kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? And he said none of these kids, like he said, were, like, horrible individuals. Like, they were all generally good kids. And, they were in a situation where, like, the system failed them miserably. And so, long story short, he goes on and on to say that, like, there was a fight. He put it actually after the book situation, he put his 2 weeks in it. He was like, I'm out. Like, y'all, this is ridicululous. And they pulled him into the office and said, like, well, no, we got you back. Why don't you stay? So he, obviously stayed. And then, like, this whole fight broke out with these two kids, and he, was trying to separate the two kids. And he got one of the kids, a fight happened, and he got one of the kids to, like, he was holding one of the kids back from this fight, and that his supervisor was yelling at him to put the kid on the ground on his face, when, like, the kid didn't need to be put on the ground on his face. Like, he had it under control because the kids listened to him. And, like, I mean, it was like, no, put him on the ground now, put him face down on the ground, like, put him in handcuffs, and, like, screaming all these obscene things to this, like, kid. He said generally in his pod, the kids' age ranged anywhere from, like 12 to, like, 17, 18 before, and, like, they were, like I said, predominantly Latino. So it makes me think that it's more of, like, an ICE detention type thing. And, like, he cried at the end of it, and he felt so bad because, like, they called him in the office, and they were like, you should have put the kid on the ground. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. I would not put a kid's face on the ground, like, push him on the ground like that. Like, that's not the answer. Like, he didn't need to be put on the ground and all that shit. Like, he, just talk to these kids, like, talk to them. They're good kids, but, like, you don't give them the opportunity, and it's like the system is set up, and they tell you, like, oh, we want reform and we want all this, but, like, in reality, that's not what the situation is. It's a power trip. And, like, it was very interesting to me. It was very interesting that I could, something told me to watch this, and, like, it's sad that our country and society think that this is an okay thing to do. Here you got kids that made a mistake, and they're just kids, and there's a huge lesson in it. There's a huge lesson in that, and it's like every inmate I've ever talked to has said if a guard came at me with respect, they got respect back. So it's a respect thing. You don't come up in a place like that and puff your chest out and think you're all big and bad, because nobody's going to listen to you, first off. And second of all, your shift's going to be fucking miserable because they're going to do everything in their power to make it miserable for you. If you just talk to them and, like, engage and, like, hey, man, like, kind of relate in some sort of way. That's why I feel like as a prison system as a whole, they need to do more background screening checks of guards. Like, mental health is a big one. They say that, like, military men and policemen are the number 2 people that beat their wives and beat their family because they see violence. But, like, a lot of correctional officers get hired and they have bipolar, or they're in the mental health, they have mental health issues, but they never did anything about it. So they're essentially given a power position to abuse it, and, like, like, this is acceptable, this is okay in society to do this, when in reality, no. You should have to go through extensive training to become a prison guard. There should be, like, programs put in place, like, okay, instance, like South Carolina, I think I've touched on this before, I don't know if I have or not, but I'm going to touch on it again if I have. like they put into a new system into hiring COs out here in South Carolina, where like it was like you could do 6 months and you would be a guard or whatever. Like now you have to go through like a year-long training in mental health, and how to deal with prisoners that are mental health patients, inmates as well. And like you go through another program that's all about substance abuse and addiction, and like, you know, how to come out of a situation about addiction, and like be able to, like, you know, you need to have all these things, which is great. I feel like that's what the prison system and the police force are missing, is like they don't do these extensive background checks on the people that become officers. It's like essentially putting a narcissist in a power position with a badge. And it's not right. It's not right. I always said, like I said, when I was in 6th grade, the teacher asked me what I wanted to be, and I said I wanted to be a juvenile correctional officer. That's what I wanted to be. And work in a youth facility, which is ironic because I never went to a youth facility, and like I'm obviously more about like adult prison instead of youth. Because now I look at it like I can relate to an extent with youth, because I was, you know, 12 or 14 when I started using drugs, so I can relate to them in that way. But as far as like being incarcerated and stuff like that, like I wouldn't have been able to relate to them, like, oh, I went to jail, you know. But like, I mean, I might have been able to make a difference. I could make a difference if that's really what I wanted to do in life, but that's not what I want to do. I have a very hard time believing that, like, if I did become a CO, even if it was in an adult detention center, it would be very difficult to watch other superiorities do the unspeakable things to these people. And like, I'm an empath. Like, I feel people's emotions, and I can tell emotions when I walk into a room. That's why jail was so difficult for me too, because like everybody's emotions. But like, I just as a human being cannot fathom like doing something like that to somebody that all they needed was either the right mental health medication, or they just needed somebody to talk to. Like, I mean, I find that like with me, you get way further with me if you talk to me and not yell at me, because I hate authority. I hate authority, period. Like, I hate the government, I hate authority, I hate all of it. I would rather be my own boss. I don't like working for other people that are above me. Like, I don't like that because there's always a hierarchy. And it's a pissing contest to see who could be the most like ruthless and the most vile human being on earth. Like, I mean, you hear stories, like now it's becoming, you know, big time. Like, you hear these stories from these COs that have quit. Like, I mean, like I said, the dude quit. He wasn't even there for 4 months. Like, he literally quit 3 weeks into his job, and he, you know, he cried. He said he was so sad because, like, you know, he had to leave these kids in the situation that they were in before he showed up. And like, you know, he felt like he had made somewhat of a difference, but the fact that he left was a very big issue for him, because he said, you know, I left these kids in a horrible condition, but, you know, he had to do what was good for himself, and like that was remove himself from that, because, you know, that's what he had to do. You know, so like I found it very, this is very sad. There's no rehabilitation in prison. There's no rehabilitation in youth, juvenile prison. There's none of that, period. And it angers me. Like I said, I know there's people that need to be locked up and never let out again. Like, there's monsters out in this world that need to be locked up and never let out. But the vast majority of people that are locked up are not violent, bad people. Even if they're charged with a violent crime, like they're not as bad as people make them out, or society makes them out to be. And like I said, if you walk into a situation like that and you treat somebody with respect, see, talking to somebody goes a long way with somebody, like, as a respect factor. Like, that goes a long way. And you can ask anybody that I know that's been in prison. I guarantee you all of them will say, yeah, we had that one guard that, you know, actually tried to make a difference. We had that one guard that, like, whenever this guard would come in, like, we would be on our best behaviors, because, like, you know, they were talked to like a normal person. Like, they weren't talked to like an animal or a criminal, or like, you know, they were just talked to as a human being. And that goes a long way with people. Like I said, I'm more likely to calm down and react a different way if you talk to me like I'm a person, and not a fucking piece of garbage that like society made you out to be. So, you know, I mean, that's my 2 cents on the whole situation. I'm gonna probably go live on TikTok for a little bit, and then I'm gonna go inside. I haven't really heard anything in this whole time. It's been a 15-minute video that my sister's in the process of the middle of giving birth. I feel like I'm gonna sit out in the car until like I get the phone call, like, okay, she's going into labor. I'll be like, all right, be in a minute, because I can't smoke here either, which is bull. But anyway, y'all wish me luck. I'm gonna be a aunt. And always just remember, at the end of the day, respect goes a long way with somebody if you talk to a person like they're a person. It's real facts. Anyway, broken systems out. I'm gonna try to do more of these. Yeah. So I hope y'all follow me on that, and anybody that hasn't subscribed, please subscribe. So yeah. Broken systems out. Have a good day, guys.